Hello and welcome to the Kilowatt Half Hour, your weekly stir of the electric car stew from the team at Electrifying.com. This week we'll be talking about yet another retro Renault, the Fiat 500e and the BYD Seal U DM/-I. We'll also be addressing Jeremy Clarkson's unsurprisingly negative comments about electric cars and attempting to answer your electric car questions. And time permitting, of course, we'll dip into the postbag to find out what your views are on last week's episode. I'm not Ginny Buckley.
I'm Vicky.
And I'm definitely Tom.
Which is all good. Now, I guess we should start by talking about Mr. Clarkson's comments about electric cars. Now, in case you missed it, and if you're only on any kind of social media platform, you won't be able to avoid it. Miss this. In the final episode of the Grand Tour, he said, there are lots of reasons why we're jacking this show in, but for me, one of the main ones is I'm simply not interested in electric cars. They're just white goods, they're washing machines, they're microwave ovens. You can't review those, you can't enjoy them. Discuss. What do you think, Tom?
Well, I kind of see what he means, because I think in the early days, the electric cars were white goods because they had to be the lowest common denominator to keep everybody happy. So a Nissan Leaf like I've got isn't the most exciting car to drive. It's a normal hatchback. But as electric cars become more mainstream, I think there are more interesting ones. So a Dacia Spring is quite good fun to drive because it's small and cheap. And a Porsche Taycan or an Audi e-tron GT or an MG Cyberster. They're exciting, interesting cars, all with their own personality. So I mean, he's trying to be controversial, isn't he? But I think electric cars are very different now. Vicky?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to agree with you. I think his opinion is pretty widespread. I think a lot of people sort of feel like that in the enthusiast community, if I'm honest. And I can see where they're coming from, in that I think electric cars can be quite samey, certainly up until recent years, like you say. I do think they're getting a lot better. I mean, I drove the Ioniq 5N recently, which we'll talk about in a bit. And I mean, that is extraordinarily good fun. But, if you're an enthusiast, you've grown up with petrol cars and diesel cars and whatever, and, you're used to combustion engines and they do bring a certain character to a car, and electric cars don't have that. But I don't think that makes them boring. I don't think that makes them not enjoyable. I really love the way electric cars drive, and I'm a petrol head just like you guys. I've got stupid old cars, and I will miss enthusiast petrol cars, and maybe synthetic's the answer for track cars and stuff. I don't know, but I would absolutely say that electric cars are not boring. They're different. They're very alien to some people, and that's fine. But and I mean, I would also say, what sort of cars is Clarkson comparing them to? What is he? I mean, is an electric car, is a Nissan Leaf, a Mark, whatever, your average electric car, is it really any more a white good than your average bog standard 3 or 4 cylinder hatchback? It's not, is it? It's doing exactly the same job. I would argue better, because it's quieter, smoother, greener, all of that stuff. So you've got to question exactly what his benchmarks are for deciding that all electric cars are boring.
I think you could also argue that there's nothing wrong with white goods, and I think a huge proportion of people buy cars as white goods, and they're happy to do that. I've got my friend at Running Club, Julie, who has a Fiat 600L, and those great big sort of fat Fiats, and she hates it. She's had it for 3 years. It's never been washed. As far as I'm aware, it's never been served. It looks like it's just been pulled out of the canal. And she just says, it's just a car. It just gets me from A to B. I don't care about it. It's white. That's all I could tell you about this car. And it's a Fiat, because I renew the insurance every year. So she just wants a car that's going to go for her. He's quite happy. She doesn't want to, there's nothing wrong with white goods. I've spent a stupid amount of money buying a Smeg toaster, which looks amazing, but it's terrible at making toast. A £15 toaster from Mazda would make much, much better toast than this thing. But I'm lumbered with it. I don't want to chuck it out because I paid a fortune for it. So yeah, in some respects, this is also in defense of white goods. Properly done, they're great. So yeah, I don't really have any beef with it whatsoever. And if you have got a good toaster and you can recommend it, please put it in the comments on the YouTube channel, because I'd love to know what does the job, basically. So yeah.
Go dual it, Mike. That'd be my suggestion.
That's another expensive one that probably won't work. So
I know.
Anyway.
No, I know. Well, I bought a dual it toaster 25 years ago, because I was bored of the £10 Argos toasters breaking all the time.
Yeah.
And it broke, the Dualit toaster broke after 2 years, and I ended up buying a timer for it, which was like 15 quid online. And I thought, I'm just spending that on the timer. But ever since I bought that timer when it was 2 years old, it's never gone wrong, and it makes great toast.
Really? I have to take mine out and turn it over halfway around. What's the point of that? Toaster's supposed to do everything evenly. So, yeah, I might as well just put it under the grill if I'm going to do that. Anyway, so people have not tuned in to listen to about toasters. So what have we been driving? Vicky? Anything good?
Well, I was about to say, actually, why haven't Dyson looked at toasters? Surely Dyson needs to come in with some kind of like funky toaster. Can you imagine?
That won't work either.
What have I been driving? I've been driving the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, and by the way, you can read the updated review on Electrifying, of course. I'm lost for words already. It is
really
incredible. I'm just blown away. I mean, I think I'm actually possibly even more kind of blown away by the 5N than I was by the Taycan when I first drove that. They're very different beasts. Obviously, you're going to draw comparisons because the Taycan is the benchmark for fun electric cars, but the 5N is a completely different animal. It reminds me weirdly of the Nissan GTR. It's got that same kind of really bullish performance and attitude to it. And obviously it's got fake gears. I say obviously. It has fake automatic gearbox. And that sounds terrible, right? And I agree. You think, simple sounds terrible. But it actually works because it does use the regen. It's a very clever thing, and it makes it feel like you're controlling the gears on the car. This thing has got an astonishing amount of performance. So you're talking 0 to 62 in, I think, about 3.5 seconds. It's a proper, really, really fast supercar, fast car. And it makes noises, and you've got so many different modes, and it pops and crackles, and it's got a crazy engine sound. It actually sounds a bit like a sort of petrol engine. And I get that a lot of people might think this sounds absolutely terrible, but obviously you can also turn all that off, and it's just a normal, quiet EV, and it rides well, and it's fabulous, and it's a big family car, and it's just an Ioniq 5. But then you can press all the right buttons and it turns into this sort of, frothing lunatic. And I absolutely love it. And it really properly handles. It's really good. I love it.
Tom?
I don't think I will.
No?
No, I think...
Well, I think you will.
Really? Well, I hope I do.
I do. I do. I know that you're not a fan of, firm riding cars and kind of really extrovert things, but it's a pretty remarkable piece of engineering because it's got I don't know how you felt about BMW when it first brought in the sort of 2 different M modes and this kind of thing, and I have to say there were aspects of the 5N that bothered me, and that it's so complicated to get the necessary modes that you want, because you can configure everything from the torque bias even to the dampers to the steering to the sounds to the it's crazy. But if you put the time into figuring it out and set your settings and give it some time to get used to it, and I just think it's one of the best handling electric cars out there. The Taycan probably handles just as well, but the 5N is up there for sheer thrills and giggles. It's wonderful. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I think it's a joy. Loved it. Really enjoyed it.
Mike, do you want to upgrade?
Do I want to upgrade? I'd love to upgrade. I don't have the money for that because I've bought mine, so it's worth £8 now, because all electric cars is worth next to nothing. No, I mean, I don't know. I think maybe a younger me might have done. I'm slightly in this, as you know, I know you and I are the Statler and Waldorf of Electrifying, Tom. And anything that's kind of got a slightly rough ride, I'm kind of shying away from these days. But I mean, that's some accolade, Vicky, because you've driven a lot of stuff, Vicky. You've driven probably some more stuff than we have, and certainly some of the saucier stuff as well. So the fact that you kind of seeing it as a good performance car in its own right, rather than just good for being an electric performance car. Have you driven the Kia, the 6 GT? Did you know how it compares to that?
I have not driven that, actually, peculiarly. That's one of the ones I've missed. I've driven the dual motor EV6 and all of that stuff, but I haven't driven the GT. I've driven the MG4 X-Power, which some people might draw comparisons with, and the 5N is just on a completely different level. I think the point about the 5N, it's not cheap, as it is 64 grand, so it's really not cheap. But if you think that you're getting, the sort of performance and handling that you're getting for that in a big, useful family car, if you, comparably, it's BMW M5 territory, isn't it, really? Yeah. And that's a lot more expensive still. So it's a pretty remarkable thing, I think. And I think it's just a great poster child for EVs are not boring, I think, is a a sort of headline there for it. So what we need to do, we need to get one in, and we need to get you two in it, and then we need to come back and do a podcast in it and tell everybody what you think, and see if we can even persuade you persuade you guys that it really is that good.
Okay, we'll get
well,
one in,
presumably
for sure,
the EV6 has just been updated, hasn't it? So the lesser
It
model.
has, yeah.
So there must be a
Yeah.
new GT, which will probably
must
get
be.
all the Ioniq 5N bits on it. So all those fake gear changes and other things that sound a bit tacky and teenagery to me.
I don't think it is. I think they're keeping the 5N as a bit more of a separate thing, a bit more of a proper track car, because they have made quite a lot of noise about the fact that the 5N is designed for the track as well. So the regen's set so that you can have a track mode and it will, recover over 40% of the energy used and all of this stuff. I mean, frankly, you're still going to struggle for range on track. I will say that now, but I mean, it's worth taking on track, and that's kind of the headline, isn't it? So yeah,
The only
people
who'll do that. The only people who take that on track are journalists. It's no owners, because you can imagine a kind of 2 and a bit ton car. It's going to tear its tires apart. They're going to be 500 quid each, and you're not going to be able to get them.
I know.
So, no one's going to do it.
Don't forget, the 5N is 200 kilos lighter than an M5. So we're not. Everybody's going, oh, it's an EV, it's so heavy. Actually, compare it to a modern performance car with a similar, actual performance, outright performance. It's not that bad. So yeah, I think we've got to give it a bit of credit on that front. But yeah, it's pretty remarkable. We'll get it in, and I'm willing to bet. I'll bet you a tenner, all of £10, that you two will like it and will live with the ride as well. The ride's not that bad. I'll put money on it.
Okay, we'll catch up with that. Tom, it just says here on this running order, it just says, Tom, that Tesla. What does that mean?
Yes. Well, it's the last week, as I'm sure you both know, I did the podcast with Ginny from the Tesla with 260,000 miles on the clock. So the only thing interesting, really, I've driven this week is that Tesla, which I thought was very interesting because it has, as we discussed, it's got a decent range still, and it's saved someone an awful lot of money in charging. But it felt all right. There were some interesting little faults of the type that if you owned that car, you'd probably not bother fixing. Like the window would drop down when you opened it, because like on cars that don't have frameless windows, it drops down, and then you had to put it back up again manually. And the door handle makes a rattling noise, and there's a few scuffs and bits on. But other than that, it didn't feel that baggy. I thought it was perfectly nice. So yeah, I enjoyed that, and I think that's worth 10 grand.
Yeah, absolutely. I drove that car and I absolutely loved it. There are a lot of miles in it. It's a really good thing, isn't it? It's pretty remarkable.
This week I'm just back from driving the BYD Seal U DMI, which has got a really long name. It's a plug-in hybrid. They do make the Seal U with a fully electric version, but in the UK we're only going to get this plug-in hybrid, and they've got big plans for this car to be a big fleet car. It's going to be the Outlander PHEV of 2024, 2025. They want this to be a big car with people who are just looking to reduce their benefit in kind tax payments. So, I mean, I was looking at it's, if your definition of good is value, practicality, and quality, then it's absolutely fine. It's great. It does ticks all those boxes. It's going to be under £340 a month on a PCP if you're a private buyer. They're relatively small batteries, 18 and a bit kilowatt hours, but combined with the petrol engine and the big fuel tank, they reckon it's also 600-mile range. There's a good kind of soft entry for people to electric cars, and I think BYD think that once they've got their customers in, they'll then buy other BYDs and other electric cars. So it's fine. I find it quite hard to get excited about plug-in hybrids, but as they go, this one was good. It's got a combination of kind of e-power, so it runs to generate electricity to go into the battery, but also if you really need both, then it can drive the wheels as well. But it's single gear, so there's none of the kind of DSG slipping through the gears and everything. So as a piece of engineering, it was really quite impressive. But it's not the kind of thing you kind of walk away from and look back and think, yeah, I'm really pleased I've got that. But I imagine, it's going back to the white goods conversation, isn't it? That will work for a lot of people. So we'd be interested to see how they get on with that. So from the cars we've been driving this week to my favourite bit and your favourite bit, Barnard's bargains of the week. What have you trawled this week, Tom?
Well, what's interesting is that MG are obviously clearing the stocks of their old stuff before new things arrive. So a ZS EV, so a nice family size SUV thing, isn't it? It's not the most sophisticated, but it's perfectly acceptable. You can get one now, brand new. You're the first name on the registration document, 19,995. I mean, that's you think about all those other things of like, yeah, we've got it in below 23,000. It's like 19,995 for a brand new MG. It's tempting, isn't it? That's cheap.
Is that because there's a facelift version coming then?
Yeah, there's a facelift. I think it might even be an all new one. And they're doing the same with MG5. So they're doing some really good deals on those as well. There's some reasonable deals on the MG4, but the ZS is the one. I mean, do you remember in lockdown and just after, they were sold out there was a 14-month waiting list for ZS EVs. Now they're like, please take them, please,
Yeah,
please.
I was going to say, I mean, they're good, aren't they, as well? It's not like it's a bad car. It's a good, really good car, the ZS EV. So, yeah, that's pretty amazing.
So, yeah, that's one of those ones you go, oh, well, that's quite cheap. The other thing which I spotted in the used car section of the electrifying.com website was a Corsa, so a Corsa electric, and it was the anniversary edition. Now, if you saw the anniversary edition, you'd know which one is red, and it had black wheels, and it was quite a nice spec. But it's just under 2 years old, but has delivery mileage. So presumably they had it out the back of some dealership where they got some bonus for registering it 2 years ago. And now they've gone, we should really get rid of that. So it's got 10 miles on the clock. And it's 13,995. That was a 28 grand car. So if 19,995 for a brand new car seems too much, then how about 13,995? So I'd be tempted again by that. But what's it been doing? Has it been stored indoors? Has it been in a field with rusty
sat with
brake
no
discs
charge in it? Exactly.
Yeah. You'd ask some questions, wouldn't you? Still a nice looking car for 14 grand.
Yeah, it's not bad.
That's an amazing deal.
Speaking of,
we have some car buying questions.
We do. We do this week. Yeah. Shall I read the first one?
Yep.
Got it from Dave R. It comes via podcast at electrifying.com. Please email if you've got any questions about car buying decisions, and we'll do our best to muddy the waters. I own a 2019 Hyundai Kona Premium SE petrol, which I'm very pleased with, but the thoughts of going full electric, I'm with thoughts about going fully electric. I'm doing mainly local driving with 2 holidays a year, lucky you, which includes a 350-mile plus trip to my destination with 3 passengers, including me, and a medium-sized pet dog. I mean, we want facts. We want a proper brief here, and that's definitely it, isn't it? I mean, it'd be nice to know the breed of the dog, but, we'll leave it at that. What I would like to have is someone with slightly bigger boot. The Kona currently has 332 litres, perhaps about 400 litres plus. Secondhand, I'm looking at a total budget of £24,000. With your experience of electric cars, are there any would you go as far to recommend? So what do you think, guys?
Well, Ginny's favourite Enyaq's going to be too much, I think, isn't it, for 24? Would you get one for 24 grand? I don't think you would, would you?
You might get some. No, I mean, he kind of wants a lot. He loves all the kit that's on. He's got a Kona Premium SE, so it's not going to. It's only going to cut it to go back to kind of you probably get a 60 kilowatt hour Enyaq with no buttons on it, wouldn't you, for that? So, I mean, I looked at an ID5. Because nobody knows what it is. It's cheap. Yeah. They're generally cheaper than ID4s because I think people think they're less practical, but it's got a huge boot. It's a 500 odd litre boot. It's massive.
Weirdly, the ID5's got a bigger boot than the ID4, which I've never quite understood. It always seems that doesn't seem to make any sense to me. But I remember that. That's a good shout, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of them, there's like first edition ones, and there's cars with loads and loads of kit on them. They just come off fleets after, because they were quite early, weren't they? They're getting to 2-3 years old now, so they're disappearing or jumping off fleets. So I would say one of those might be quite good. Certainly big enough, isn't it? Go on.
What about one of those MGs? That would possibly cover the do the job, wouldn't it? I would have thought potentially a ZS EV for 20 grand. I know the range isn't going to cover it in one go, but exactly.
Yeah,
so that would be a good shout.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Do you think that's a step up from a Kona to an MG ZS?
Yeah, I might feel a
It's
bit
similar
bigger.
sort of.
The boot's a bit bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know about range. I think the range on the ZS is similar to the Kona, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I can't remember if I'm honest.
There's two different batteries, aren't there? There's a long range and a standard range. So the long range one will be all right. Your Nero, that's got a bigger boot than a Kona, isn't it?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, a bigger car, isn't it?
I was literally about to say the same thing. The boot on the Nero is a lot better than on the Kona, so that could be. And there's quite good used ones of those around, aren't there? So that could be a good shout. Or I mean, well, I don't know about. Well, maybe big battery Leaf, because actually the boot on the Leaf's pretty good. I have to say, it's pretty spacious. So, but yeah, I think the Nero or one of those new ZS EVs, something like that, that would be a pretty good shout. I think ID3s aren't that cheap yet, are they? I don't think. I'm not sure.
They are, but I think they've got quite a small boot, haven't they? Because they're compromised by having the sort of that rear motor, aren't they? It's quite surprisingly small, the boot on an ID3. Because the ID2's got bigger boot, isn't it? The concept. So yeah, because it's front drive, so it hasn't got any of that kind of gubbins in the back. So yeah, it's they're not that huge, but the bigger MEB ones do seem to have a bit more space. So, anyway, so there you go. Dave, I hope we've helped. Probably not, but there you go. There's three options for you there. Tom, do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, so I might paraphrase this a bit. It's Steve from West Wales who says, "Hi, I love the podcast. I won't leave that bit out. Obviously, looking to replace an aging Mini that's starting to cost a fortune in repairs. I don't have enough money to buy a new car outright, and used EVs that I can afford don't really interest me. Leave Zoe's Ioniqs e-Golfs. Doing the maths has shown me that I can lease a brand new Aura 03 from a dealer more than 50 miles away for something like £180 a month on a deal with 10,000 miles. Taking into account the fuel savings, this would cost me no more to own and run than continuing to run, service and repair the Mini," which is a point I've made a few times actually about Auras.
Yeah.
The question is, I can afford to do this with the Aura. The lease costs are so low at the moment. Will I live to regret it? Will I be able to insure it and find the parts for bits that are going to break? I like the car itself and will just turn off all the things that beep at me. But is it viable to actually own one? Thanks. So, well, I have a reply from another reader or viewer who coincidentally didn't comment on the YouTube, who says it's Doug Out from Torquay, who says, first of all, he owns a 2016 Tesla Model S with 266,000 miles and thinks it's brilliant.
Bravo.
But he delivers cars for a living. So that's how he's got that big mileage on his Tesla.
Okay.
But he says he's delivering an Aura 03, and I have to say they are much better than when they first came out. The software initially made you feel like you were driving an arcade game, but in recent months, the updates have made the Aura much nicer to live with. I'd choose a 03 Pro Plus over a Dolphin if it was my own car. So maybe he's answered Steve from West Wales' question. I would say that I think parts are going to be all right, because that car is imported by the same people who bring in Isuzus and Subarus. So they're not like, if you buy something from Amazon and it's like drop shipped from container and it's not going to be available in a week's time once they've sold that container load. I don't think that's the same with Aura, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I was on the BYD event today. They had and I did the first Dolphin launch, and I remember they proudly put up five sort of dealer groups that they were dealing with, and it kind of felt like a sort of a small start. And now they put on this huge screen, I think it's like 30 plus dealer groups that they've got, not just dealers. So that if each dealer group's got 20 or 30 branches of themselves, so they really are everywhere now. And I think the Chinese brands are going to, maybe not so much Aura, because Great Wall have sort of backed out a little bit of Europe, haven't they? But certainly BYD, the rate at the scale at which they're rolling everything out is remarkable, really. But I share your thing. I don't think I wouldn't be too worried, especially if he's going to lease it for 3 years. I think, maybe in 10 years' time, you might struggle to get parts for certain early cars. But like you are with anything, I can struggle to get parts for my old smart car, So it's if it's a lease and it's that small period of time, I really wouldn't have any concern to do it at all, Steve. Should we look at some news from this week
Mm-hmm.
while we're here? There's been another. Renault have squeezed the tube of old ideas again, because I think you were talking about the Renault 17 last week and the week before, weren't you, Tom? Which looks glorious. But the Estafette, I think that's how you would pronounce it. It's the small van. If you're wondering what it looks like, if you've had a pizza served to you at a country fair, or it's either come out of a Citroen H1 van or a converted Renault Estafette van. So there are the sort of classic 1950s, 1960s French delivery vans. And Renault have kind of reinvented that. They said it's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. Definitely going to happen. It's got a lot of really crazy little things that you walk through it. They're using the kind of platform, the skateboard platform, to really make use of all the space that's in it. It's got sliding pocket doors instead of doors that open outwards. So, and it's going to be built for kind of that last mile urban delivery kind of thing. There's no range figures or anything like that, but I imagine it will probably use the same platform that everything else does in the Renault range. So they say it's developed by Ampere, which is Renault's own kind of electric development in-house company. So I think it looks great. I don't know if you two guys have seen it. What do you think? It looks a lovely thing.
Yeah, it does look great.
I do think it looks really cool.
It's not retro, is it? Well, it's got some retro bits to it, but it looks suitably modern. So it's not like a pastiche. It's I think it's a very cool thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it does look very cool. I think there's a space in the market for that sort of thing as well. I think you have to accept that it's a very niche, it's a specific purpose, isn't it? But that doesn't mean it's bad. So it does look very cool. I think Renault's doing well with its styling at the moment, actually. Driving the Renault 5 soon, so keep your eyes peeled on electrifying.com. We will bring you a first drive of the Renault 5 in the next few weeks. So,
There's so much pressure on that being good, isn't there?
Oh, I know. Yeah, well, we'll find out, won't we? But yeah, I do think Renault's doing well at the moment with its styling. So we'll see if it drives well, the Renault 5.
Indeed. Anything caught your eye, Vicky, this week in the news?
Yes, indeed. So talking about looking good, the Fiat 500e production has been paused at the Mirafiori plant, which is a bit sad. So 4 weeks, apparently, they're going to halt production because, well, demand hasn't been great. So it's a bit of a shame, isn't it, really? I think the 500e is one of the greatest pieces of car design out there at the moment. Bar none, I just think it's wonderful. But I think probably the range and the cost have made it a bit of a hard one to justify for people when there's so many other things, MG4, now with BYD and the Dolphin and this kind of thing. There's so much cheaper options out there. Because if you want the long range 500, it's over £30,000, isn't it? It's a lot, really.
It's a lot of money, isn't it? I mean, there's only so much you can forgive for that. I mean, I love it. I absolutely love it. I would have one, but because it's so much money, and like all cars, it has fairly chunky depreciation because I would argue it is overpriced for the market. That makes the finance more expensive as well because you're paying off that chunk of depreciation. You kind of think if it was cheaper to start with, the finance would be less and blah blah blah. But Stellantis famously don't want to sell any cars at a loss, and that 500 is built on a platform it shares with nothing else. It was all developed pre-Stellantis, wasn't it? So I know that
it's a Fiat platform.
Olivier Francois wanted to sell that platform to other brands within Stellantis Group, and they all said no. Well, we've already got these plans, so it must be more expensive to build that car than it can any of the other Stellantis cars because they share so many bits, and it's unique, that 500 platform. So even the 600 is on it's on a Stellantis platform, isn't it? So it's you can see where the problem lies, and they build it in Italy, which against sort of it's a high wage economy effectively, isn't it? And not the old 500 they used to build them in Poland, didn't they? So they were a lot cheaper to make out there. So it's you can see where the problem is.
It's one of those frustrating things, isn't it? It's such a great little car, but you have to say that from the point of view of somebody buying one, it is just so hard to justify. You have to really want to look good. That's the thing. It's really the styling that justifies it, isn't it? So, and I mean, even with things like the Mini as well, you kind of feel like you're getting a bit more for your money with the range and that kind of thing, don't you? So, yeah, it's a tough one. It's, like I said, such a shame because it's a great car. So I hope that they can, manage to discount it and get people buying it because it deserves to be out there. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
They've also done this strange thing, haven't they, where that they've offered £3,000, which they say is Yeah, they're giving it some name like saying, "Oh, it's bringing back the
E-grant,
plug-in
they
car
call it, the
grant."
Fiat
Yeah,
E-grant. Yeah.
yeah, but it's available to everybody. So you just go in and they say, "Yes, we'll take £3,000." Well, then why not just make it £3,000 cheaper? There will be a reason that they did it with Corsa and
Yeah.
Astra and everything else, where they just brought a special edition and then changed the names of all the models, didn't they, to make them cheaper, to avoid upsetting the people who'd bought it at the old price. But just make it cheaper in the first place. Actually,
Yeah.
the other car in my bargains of the week, which didn't quite make it because that Corsa was too cheap, was a Fiat 500, and it was one of the 24 kilowatt hour ones, and it was 12,995 delivery mileage.
It's
But
a
that
good
24
price, but
It's a
kilowatt
great
hour,
runaround, isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
it
hard.
is, but you'd have to live in
Still.
town, wouldn't it? Less than 100 mile
You would.
range.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I'm still a big fan of low range EVs. I think there's I think that problem is the market hasn't caught up with them yet. Customers are too worried about it, and there are lots of people that could live with that range very easily. I mean, how many people live with Mark 1 Nissan Leafs, like used Nissan Leafs that have got, real world range of 70, 80 miles? Exactly, right? There are people out there that could, but it's, understandably, there's so much fear of it, isn't there? That's the problem. But nonetheless, I think as a runaround, as a second car for the household, that's a great buy, isn't it? What a great thing.
Nice.
But yeah, especially with things like the EC3 and the Dacia, it's only going to get harder for the Fiat as well, isn't it? So what can you do?
Now, what caught my eye this week, there are a lot of vans because there's been a big van show. So whereas motor shows, traditional motor shows are kind of dying, for commercial vehicles, they're still huge. So there's been this big show and there's been all these new vans. And the one which is probably the biggest news is the new Volkswagen Transporter. Now, people who have Transporters love them, so you'll see ones with lowered and body kits and W12 Bentley engines and camper vans and all sorts. But this one's really controversial because it's basically a Transit with Volkswagen badges on. And the traditional Volkswagen buyers have gone nuts about it because they think there's something unique about a Volkswagen Transporter in terms of quality and everything else and style. And this is a Transit, which is, it's like a Land Rover rebadging a Jeep, I suppose, for them. And so it's hugely controversial. What's happened with all the old Transporters, all the old stock was bought up by all the dealers who are now holding them back and going, "Oh, we've got one. Do you want it? How much are you willing to pay?" Because people want the old car, which isn't great. I mean, I'm sure it would be brilliant because a Transit's brilliant, but it's not really a Volkswagen, and that's going to make people a bit cross. But there will be a great electric version because the electric Transit's great. So I don't know. There will be some people getting cross. I'm not one of them. But it's interesting to watch from the sidelines.
I can imagine. We've just about got enough time. Shall we dip into the post bag from comments from last week's and the week before's podcasts? I'll start with this one, which is a moan again. At Darbert553 from YouTube. Am I the only one who's slightly depressed by the fact that both Smart and Mini now make enormous cars that bear no resemblance to the original models? They should both be small city cars. And by the way, the hashtag should be said number. I feel like we do this every week. Yes, hashtag should be a number, but it isn't because that's what Smart call it. And if we start calling it number 1 or number 5, number 3, whatever, then no one will know what we're talking about. And if we write our reviews like that, no one will find them on the internet. So yeah, it's nuts, but it's Smart's way of calling it. So I'm afraid we have to follow on with that. As for them being small and not the same as the original cars, I don't think that they're never going to be, are they? Because you can't make a car as small as an old Smart was because you just wouldn't pass any safety modern safety tests. Although it was incredibly ahead of its time, the original Smart, and was incredibly strong in all the sort of safety tests it did. But stuff's moved on. You can't make a small car like that. And Mini. It's the brand, isn't it? I think Ginny said she quite liked the Countryman when she drove it last week on last week's podcast. I thought I was going to hate it, and I quite liked it, and I kind of understand what they're doing because it's the people who do like the sort of cheekiness and the kind of big round bits and pieces of the old Mini. It is all in a package because people are growing up, they've got kids, they need space and everything. So I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we're getting those cars back again, are we?
No. For what I would like to make one point though, that the new Mini, actually the Mini Electric, is smaller than the old one. So at least we are going slightly in the right direction there. Only very, very marginally, but it hasn't actually got bigger. So that there's some good news here. This is, it's but well, yeah,
I think it's shorter. It's shorter but wider, isn't it? So it's become like a square. It's
yeah.
You look at it from above.
Yeah.
Yeah. This number thing, I just think that having a car called the number 2 would have unfortunate connotations with anyone with toddlers, I think.
Just you to think.
I'm just going
across my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Next comment, please, Tom. I think we need to move on from that.
Talking of Volkswagen vans, Mark Smith says, I'm getting an ID Buzz Cargo. Can't wait, then our whole household will be fossil fuel free. I'd be interested to know, Mark, how you're going to charge. I mean, I have 2 chargers, which I think is an expensive way of doing it. But Helen, who works with us, is going to be have 2 cars that need charging, and she's kind of wondering how she's going to do it. So if you have a clever way, have you got a double-headed charger or something, then please let us know.
Okay.
We've also got Simon Orchard. He's written in and says, can you tell me which are the best cars that can fit a baby seat in the back seat without having to bring the passenger seat all the way forward? Because I mean, baby seats these days are absolutely enormous. So he says, we've just got our toddler, his next seat, and all the ones we've looked at so far are so big, it's a rear-facing reboarder style that the passenger has to sit in the back with him. Blimey. It's lovely for him, but does mean our car is now effectively a 3-seater. So cars with loads of rear passenger space, guys, what are we thinking? My first thought was actually new Scenic or used Ioniq 5. That was my first thoughts. As I don't know, Simon hasn't given us any idea of what his budget might be and that kind of thing, but I figure if there's not enough space in those, then we're in trouble, I think, probably, but because they've got loads of space.
How big's this baby if they've got to sit in the back with him without seat?
It's the problem is because these...
Yeah. What's a reboarder seat?
Those rear-facing seats.
So these days, child seats have to are rear-facing for as long as possible. So even when they're toddlers, so fairly, sort of. I'm not sure. My daughter's 8, so the rules have changed a lot even since she was young. But yeah, so you have even fairly kind of toddlers going on school-age kids in rear-facing seats now, and the problem is it takes up a huge amount of space. So you do get some clever seats that kind of swivel and stuff to make access easier and all of this kind of thing. But it is a problem, and it is, it's very difficult to find a car that's actually big enough, really, for them to have plenty of space for those in the front and in the back. So I see where he's coming from. But I do think, I think even with the new seats, I think a Scenic has got loads of rear leg space. Ioniq 5's huge, and sliding seats in the 5, which probably be useful.
Yeah.
Enyaq. But again, I don't know what Simon's budget is. So if you want to let us know, Simon, what your sort of budget is, and then we can have a think. But those would be my first thoughts.
Okay,
Vicky, you're looking angelic again with your.
Sorry, I know I'm moving around with the sun. I've got it's a very unusual problem to have, but the sun is is so bright in my work sauna that I have here.
If you're listening to this podcast on one of the podcast apps, you may wonder why we keep sort of making up. Is that we've got a very rare problem in the UK, and so much we have sunlight that's coming in and hitting Vicky's camera. So she occasionally goes every 20 minutes she goes fairly angelic, and we can't see it like us. So,
I know. I promise you, I'll invest in some blinds. I'll get that sorted. Don't worry.
Okay.
But yeah,
yes, I've got a new camera and the microphone, so hopefully there won't be any complaints about that.
Stop the complaints.
Not this week. And some water, so
Yeah, we've all got water this time. Yes,
I've brought water too.
There we go. See, we do listen. We take these criticisms on board, don't we, about everything? So that's good. Stuart Peacock, 4873 says, I have been watching the videos posted for a good few months. I decided to sell my Skoda Karoq and buy an electric car. Brilliant. Decided that the one I really liked was the Hyundai Ioniq 6. I found a nice one at a good price at a Hyundai dealer in Poole. Sold my car in Glasgow and headed to Poole on the train. That's, people worry about buying a car in the next town, don't they? This guy's bought a car in, and unless in case you're unaware of UK geography, those two almost the furthest points you could get from each other. Well, they're not, but they're an awful long way away from each other. He drove the car, did the deal, and headed to Glasgow from Poole in my new to me EV. This is his first journey in an electric car as well. Bravo. He left the dealer at 3:45 and arrived home after 466 miles at 1:30 in the morning. What a first drive in an electric car. I wanted to read that out because I just thought that's brilliant, because, you know, that shows commitment, doesn't it? He didn't have any problems with his rapid
real
charging.
adventure.
It was quite a long. It's an adventure. It's quite a long message, so I paraphrase it. But he topped up. He had no problem rapid charging on the way up there. It was a dream. So you know, if you're worried about going to travel to go and get a car, don't, because Stuart's done it. He said it's cool, so it's fine. It's no problem at all. So well done, Stuart. That's a good story. We like to hear stories like that. So if you've had one similar to that, please either email us at podcast@electrifying.com or leave a comment below on the YouTube episode. Tom.
Now, I'm going to deliver some bad news, I think, to Drew Kyle, who got in touch via email. He said, can you help me? I've just got a second-hand Vauxhall Combo XL EV. How much road tax will I pay next year? So for those of you who don't know, we have to pay road tax on electric cars next year. And it will even be retrospectively applied to cars which have been registered in previous years. So I have an electric car and it's been free road tax ever since I've had it and ever since it's been new, but I will have to pay road tax on it next year, which is a bit irritating. Now, for cars registered between the 1st of April 2017 and the end of March 2025, it's going to be £190 a year. That's at the current rate, might go up in 2025 in the budget, who knows. If it's registered between March 2001 and the end of March 2017, it's 20 quid for the year, which is slightly more reasonable. It's kind of whatever, yeah. But vans, 335 quid a year.
Does it count?
So electric vans are the same as anything else. But what's slightly annoying, if you're a van driver, is that there are certain Euro 5 vans which are registered between certain times and that which will be lower than the electric vans because they've just got those kind of rights to be lower for those years. So 335 quid from 0 to 335 quid. That's going to make you go, that's going to make you grumpy, isn't it?
Well, that stings, doesn't it? Yeah.
Because vans usually had the light touch, didn't they, tax-wise? Certainly benefit in kind tax. You get, it's next to nothing, wasn't it, for commercial vehicles? Hence the proliferation of double cabs all those years back. There were.
Yeah, I think there are certain Land Rover drivers who have Defenders or Discoveries who went for the commercial version because rather than having to pay £710 a year, they pay £335. So that's kind of the other end of the scale. But then they've been a bit knackered when they try and get in low emission zones because suddenly they're having to pay commercial rates again. So, and when you go through the Dartford Tunnel or one of those other tolls, and it's like, what do you mean it's a commercial vehicle? No, it's not. Yes, it is. Yeah. Pay more.
That is bad news. Well, that's not good, is it? Sorry, Drew. That's hope you carry on listening, even though you'll be paying a bit more. So, Andy Smith 9913, and we've also had another one from Blobstrom. Can you do a review of the 2025 model year refresh of the Ioniq 5? Massive update, apparently. Whoa. Who doesn't like the Ioniq 5? Is that...
Sorry, do you want to start that one again? That was my dog. I've got the window because it gets so hot in there.
No, I liked it. I just thought it was a comment on the Ioniq 5. Was that one of the? Was that maybe your dog's driven it?
She just doesn't.
Clearly
doesn't like modern retro styling. I'm afraid. No, terriers are notoriously not a fan of that.
Clearly prefers the EV6 in that particular argument. Andy Blobstrom, yes, we are in the process of getting one in, and we will review it. I'm not entirely sure how massive it is. I think it gets a larger battery and a few detail changes similar to what the EV6 has just had. And there's the review of the updated one that's just gone up on electrifying.com. So we'll get in, we'll have a look at it. I'll see if there's any bits I can move from the new one into my one, and then send it back and see if they notice. But yeah, it's got a rear wiper. Actually, yeah, I'll take that back. It is a massive update because it's got a rear wiper, so you can see what's behind him. So yeah, okay. I don't think I'll be able to transplant that, Tom. I think it's more than just the blade. But there we go. Yes, no, but in all seriousness, we will do it. I promise you, we'll get that in. Yep.
Right, we've also heard from MC Hooligan 09. He said, saw Tesla at the Good Food Show. Okay, and the Tiny Ilkley Food Fair. Wow, that all sort of fair old school as well. That sounds quite fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, sounds good.
Incidentally, the young man on the Tesla stand at Ilkley insisted that Tesla no longer transfer free charging on early Model S cars to subsequent owners. Please, can you clarify? Love the podcast. Weekly must watch. Excellent. Well, that's good to know. In terms of the early Model S's, I have not heard this. Now, as Tom's mentioned, we drove a high mileage Model S that was valid for that recently. Now, I've looked it up online and I have actually sent a request to Tesla for some information because I can't find anything about this, so I'm really not sure. But to my knowledge, and from what I can research, Tesla offered unlimited free supercharging for life to cars ordered before January the 15th, 2017, and between August 2nd, 2019 and May 26th, 2020. I've not heard that that's changed. And there's nothing about it online, which surprises me. So I'm not sure, but I have sent a request to Tesla for a bit more information. So if I hear, I will come back to you on a podcast soon. So thank you for flagging it up to us.
My understanding of that was if they went back into the Tesla system, so they became official Tesla used cars, Tesla took it off, a bit like they do with all those electronic options like the self-driving things.
Bits, pieces, yeah.
Right.
So they nabbed it. If you sold it out of the system, so you sold it privately to somebody else, I think you got to keep it. But let's see what Tesla say.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, I will check with them and find out what they say. You may be right. I couldn't find sort of clarification. There seemed to be some fairly contradictory things online. So yeah, I will find out what Tesla says and come back to you and confirm one way or the other.
Excellent. And I think on that bombshell, we probably ought to leave it because surprise, we've overrun again, which we do every week. So thank you so much for listening. If you have been, please leave a comment on the YouTube version. And if you're listening to this on the podcast app, please like and subscribe to the channel. It would be much appreciated. I've been Mike. I've been joined by Vicky and Tom from electrifying.com. Thank you very much for watching. We will see you next time. Bye.
See you next time.
Bye.